Well, that sort of the way we were pushed to the end was intentional, because it gives to the topic we're going to talk about more authenticity, because you're all asleep now. And that's what we're going to talk about. To tell you right up front what we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about sleep, how sleep has something to do with the circadian clock, and how the circadian clock has something to do with light. And we had earlier on and yesterday sort of these incidences of how incredibly productive DLD is in bringing people together. Now, here's a gentleman I've known for many, many years without knowing him, because I knew of him. He made a product which is called F.Lux, which is a pun, by the way, which I'm not going to go into. And he's going to talk about what this product does. And I knew about the product, and I was always the one who said we need such a product, and we didn't know each other. He knew what I was doing, and I knew what he is doing, and we've met here for the first time. So, sleep. What has sleep to do with the internet? It's very easy. You can monitor sleep on social networks by the activities going down. So we have been talking about wake here all the time over the last 2 days, and we are going to talk about how important sleep is to make wake worthwhile. And I give you an example of what we are doing. Two examples. One of a modern fad, and the other one of an example which I was accused of to use to speak to women, and it's not the case. Because what I do is I say, let's presume that washing machines went through a selection process for other consumers, for competition. The consumers want the best washing to come out clean, is one of the aims. And in a short while, and with very little electricity, and so forth. So there are pressures on building a washing machine. And I am sure that the washing machines we can buy nowadays provide us with the latest insights on how to do this best. That's called evolution. It's an evolutionary pressure. And what you all don't do, I presume, is that you get a program going which, let's say, has a certain time to make the washing product optimal. And then, how many of you would go to the washing machine after half that time is over, press the button and say, that should be enough? How many would do that? You would. Impatient, and that's why you probably have wet and dirty clothes. But you're in the minority. But you all are doing this to your sleep every day. Because evolution has provided you with a window and with an individual need for a certain sleep. And how many of you use an alarm clock on workdays of any kind? It's 85% of the population, and it took me about 60 years to understand what it means. It means that you haven't slept enough. Otherwise, we wouldn't need the alarm clock. And that's what so you're going to your washing machine, which has been, over evolution, tuned to give you the best product. And this best product is making you awake and making you efficient over the course of your wakefulness. So it doesn't take away from your wakefulness, it works towards it. And we still press the button and say, this should be enough. Okay. The other one is for centuries, men had this thing going on by sort of transforming buildings and everything else into mine is longer than yours. This has now taken a new format and can be used also by women, because the new format is mine is shorter than yours. And this bragging goes towards the night, to the sleep. I sleep shorter than you do. It's nothing else but the old penis thing in a different coat. And it's not good. And that's why I propose that we use the internet to do sleep research, because we know far too little about sleep. We know sleep is controlled by the circadian clock, which is a timing system in all our cells. And there is a control system in our brain, and this control system does nothing else but listen, in quotes, to the light outside.
Some people think, when they sleep depends on, when they have to be at work or when they eat or when their friends are awake. But really, every person has a system in their brain that looks for daylight, and when they see bright light, they say it's daytime, and when they see darkness, they say it's time to sleep. And what's remarkable about this system is it keeps running even if you don't actually see light and dark. But it does respond to seeing light and dark at the wrong times. So if you go to an office and it's a little bit dark there, and this is just a normal person, not somebody who works the night shift, and then you go home at night and you use a really bright device, the remarkable thing we're learning about the lights that you use in your iPad or your bright computer screen is that those lights to your brain look half as bright as daylight. So by any of the metrics they use in the lab, how far you're moving the circadian rhythm in one day, or how much melatonin you see disappear from the blood, a lot of the brighter lights we use are half as bright as daylight. And so what happens is we're sort of extending the natural day with devices at night, and we're not actually generating enough bright light during the day. So your body's looking for this very bright signal and this very dark signal, and we're giving it sort of the same thing all the time. And
that's why most of us need an alarm clock, because we are too late under these conditions. They're very weak signals we're giving to our clocks, and the weak signals are too little light during the day and too much light during the night. It should be inverse. A lot of light during the day, no light during the night. And Ken has done a lovely experiment, a friend of mine in Colorado, which is up your alley.
Yeah, so this is a wonderful researcher, Ken Wright, and he did a very simple experiment in a field where a lot of the experiments are pretty complicated. And he took about half a dozen of his students camping, and they did it with the arsenal of melatonin tests and all the things to measure what their body clocks were doing. But what they found was they had this wide assortment of people who woke up late, people who woke up early, and they went camping for a week. And at the end of the week, they were waking up 2 hours earlier on average, but the range before that week was very large. And after that week, everyone was getting up in a much narrower time. So what they had done is taken this big difference in all these people. We're used to some people waking up at noon and some people waking up at 5 a.m., and they had collapsed it by showing people a strong light-dark cycle.
Which also shows that the morals about late people being lazy or late people being sick is actually true. But it isn't true anymore. In the old days, when we all got enough light during the day and no light during the darkness, if somebody couldn't sleep before 2 o'clock, somebody had a pathology. Nowadays, it's practically normal, because nobody gets enough light during the day and too much light during the night. And it sets the healthy clocks to being very, very late. But our society hasn't responded, and especially in schools, and especially in Europe, the youngsters who have the latest clocks of all. It's almost a triviality that we know, but we have measured this, and children are early birds. Then you become later and later and later and later, and at the age
Your
of 90...
research says several hours later.
Several hours later.
So
And then at 19, if you are a woman, and at 21, if you are a man, they're always a bit later in their development. You switch and you become earlier again until you reach my age, where you are as early as children, which is convenient because I'm bonding with my grandchild at the moment, while my children can sleep in. if we share the same roof from time to time.
So what's remarkable about the world right now is, in addition to screens that run software, we also have an increasing number of lights that can talk to the internet. And so I think what's exciting about the next 10 years is the ability to shape that light, and to, if today we might have control of a small percentage of the light you see, mostly through the screens, and that's what our product does. But I think increasingly the light you see at work, the light you see at home, may be under the control of software. And the truth is that's a pretty scary prospect, because we have to actually know how the body works to write the software. So that's one of the things I've been thinking a lot about. But if you think about some of the people we've heard from in the last couple days, we've heard from people trying to measure the effects of online marketing and how these things convert. We've heard from people doing wearables, and a lot of the new devices and the new health technologies, the output is sort of to give you advice or to make you feel bad. And what excites me so much about light as an output of some of these models is that we can test a hypothesis, we can measure your sleep, and we can do that day after day after day, and we can do the science as we build the technology. And I think that closed loop is sort of what I aspire to build, and that's kind of a very exciting prospect.
Which makes a lovely point, and that is the world is a laboratory. And you can plug into that laboratory, and you can actually find so many different conditions. I'm investigating people in Brazil who live without electricity. How does their sleep look like? And if you look at their sleep, you will find that they wake up quite often. So the question that we are used to, how was your sleep? And you answer that question by, it was bad, if you have the feeling you woke up quite a lot. Waking up during your sleep is very normal. And those people have no knowledge what you're talking about when you say, well, isn't it disagreeable if you wake up during the night? Because it's normal for them. For us, it's not normal because we know that if we wake up, we can't cram our sleep into a very consolidated episode until the alarm clock rings. That's the only reason why we think waking up during the night is a bad thing. And sleep is very individual. Sleep length. People get by with 3 hours, but also other people need more than 12 hours. And also sleep timing, as we've already said, and especially in those days where we have very little environmental stimulation by light. The differences in sleep timing can be as much as 12 hours, meaning, and we had a talk about mattresses today, meaning that we could actually cut the number of mattresses into half, because we could share them. Those who go to bed at 4 o'clock could say good morning to those who wake up at 4 o'clock. But we have to also adjust our entire work timing to these highly individual sleep times.
Yeah, we've certainly learned this through the software, that if you tell people what they must do, they will tell you that you're wrong, and they have their own schedule and they intend to stick by it. But I think there's so many advantages to accommodating differences in people. I live in LA where we have a lot of traffic, and the idea of not having everyone start work at the same time is actually a really neat thing, because it would make life better for everyone. And I think Till probably has some comments about sort of how we're starting school way too early for people at certain ages. And I think it seems to be a very bad problem that people who would sleep until 10 a.m. are forced to get up at 7 a.m. when they're in high school.
Yeah, it's a biological program, as I said, that they get late. After 16, they get very late, and it's only until the early 20s they get earlier again. And what we're actually doing, at least in Germany, we are trying to educate people whom we steal the last half of their sleep, which is highly necessary to consolidate what you have learned the day before and to prepare your brain to be able to accept new information. So that's not really the most efficient way to do it. And then we put them into classrooms where they have micro-sleeps, one after the other. And the bad thing about micro-sleeps is that neither the micro-sleeper nor the teacher notices it. And I always wondered why there were some incidents in my school days when I saw this face of the teacher and said, "Till, you can answer this." And I didn't even hear the question. And then the teacher thought, I can't answer it. If I had heard the question, I could have answered it. But I had a microsleep and I didn't notice. And therefore, it's a highly inefficient way to educate youngsters. You shouldn't do that before 10 o'clock in the morning. Very simple, to be efficient. Therefore, we have to make work times much more flexible. Any questions? Yes.
What are the results of sleep studies done on people where daylight and nighttime vary widely, like above the Arctic Circle?
Above the Arctic Circle, I think even in New York, over the course of the year, daylight and nighttime vary quite substantially. But what you probably mean is what do people do if there's constant light? And what do people do if there's constant darkness? If you live in places like this, it used to be, I just learned it's not quite as bad anymore. Your chances to commit suicide are much higher. The depression rates are higher. Your use of alcohol is enormously higher. It's not very good, but it's livable.
And yet,
you can compensate for it. And they sleep normally if they can, if they don't have to get up if they don't suffer from what I call social jet lag, which is the discrepancy of what your body clock wants and what the social clock wants from you. You can measure that. It's social jet lag, and you never have to leave your hometown, and you still get it.
But the extreme changes in day and night do not affect the circadian cycle?
Yes, they do. You get later in winter and earlier in summer. You sleep a bit more in winter, and you sleep a bit less in summer. Your depression rates go through an annual cycle. Your cravings for carbohydrates go through an annual cycle. We are also seasonal beings and not only daily beings.
and I think, yeah, restoring some of the seasonality. If you think about artificial light as sort of extending our day to be sort of a permanent summer, you know, the seasonality that we've experienced naturally may be really important to our health. So restoring some of that could be important.
Yes, especially since all these clocks have one big task, and that is anticipation. These clocks have to anticipate that we get up. They have to anticipate that we will eat, and prime our physiology to do so. If we live in a constant summer, we don't give our immune system, for example, to anticipate that a wave of influenza viruses are coming along. And I bet you we would be much more immune to these waves if we lived in a more seasonal world. Steffi, it was nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. I can listen to you both forever because
Forever.
all of us think a lot about sleep, and we have many questions. Some of the questions we have you did answer, and I heard that you're doing a data bank on sleep patterns. Could you
Yes.
give us a short?
Well,
thing when
I'm
it's-
still looking for money to do that. You heard a lot about wearables. At the beginning, I thought I'm going to go into developing a wearable, and I totally gave up on that. And then I look at what all these wearables do, and they do give you information about your sleep, which is unvalidated. They don't tell you how they get to it, and therefore I thought, to do real research, and we want to compare sleep in millions of people, why don't we give them the chance to buy wearables, and they exist, or demand of their wearable producers to do this, to get the real data. And then they can upload the data to a platform that we are creating, and then they're getting real feedback. And that will be so attractive that I think we're going to attract an enormous amount of people that will voluntarily upload their data, because the feedback we will give them will be so detailed that we will flabbergast them. Out of pure activity, we can meanwhile extract really the sleep structure, the sleep cycles. And then, for those who really feel they want to be part of this human sleep project, we'll give them the opportunity to do very small tests on their iPhones, on their smartphones. And then we start to correlate sleep structure and the results from tests, because we still don't know an objective way to judge sleep quality. That means we can draw maps of obesity, of diabetes, of anything we can acquire, but we can't draw maps of sleep quality. And that's sort of my goal, to have an objective measure for sleep quality.
Some of these effects take so long to progress. Like if you're talking about lifetime cancer risk, or you're talking about, being predisposed to type 2 diabetes, you see some of this in the lab, but you don't really see it until you put it in real life and measure it. And I would say Till seems, from my perspective, he was doing big data many years before anyone was saying those words. So that's very neat to see.
And I have to say something about Michael. Michael changed my life when he invented Picasa. I still think it's the best way to organize your pictures, your photos, and Michael is the man behind Picasa. So give him a clap for this.